Segregation is peace. Now, by this I don't mean that segregation leads to peace, or that good fences make good neighbors. While I believe all of that is true too, I'm saying something more fundamental. Peace means separation. Let me illustrate this with a classic example: Germany and Poland. Two separate countries. When Germany invades Poland, what are they doing? They are breaking down the border. They're ending the separation. And by ending the separation, they are starting a war. Now, if they were to end the war and have peace with Poland, what would they then have to do? They would have to agree upon some new borders, which is to say, agree upon the new parameters of segregation. This process of resegregating is the peace process. It is not merely part of or conducive to peace, it is peace. When we talk about the Arab-Israeli conflict, and we talk about the parameters of the two states, it is that resegregation, those parameters of separation, that is the peace process. Not part of, not something to do with, that fundamentally is peace. And the converse is true. Unification, or breaking down barriers, breaking down borders, that is war. I was listening to an interview in Jonathan Haidt, and he was talking about how university sporting events allow for tribalistic tendencies to manifest in a safe and nonviolent way. When Texas Tech comes to Virginia Tech, the fans don't attack the opposing team with machetes or anything, which makes sense, because Texas Tech doesn't rule over Virginia Tech for 4 years if they win. Imagine if Texas Tech did rule over Virginia Tech if they won. Well, in that situation, the sane action would be to kill the team that's coming in before they even got into the stadium. Now, imagine a world in which this was true, in which the outcome of football games determined rulership. And now imagine that this was agreed to be some optimal and fair system, and if you oppose this, if you try to violently prevent these games from taking place, that would be considered intolerant, or un-American, or terrorism, or whatever. What you would have in that situation would be a Cold War, a series of defeats and peace treaties, which are enforced by troops, and financial expropriation of the vanquished by the victors. All the stuff of war, except actual armies, and actual battles, and actual shells and bombs and stuff. It's war without the armies. And then idiots come in and they wonder, well, golly gee, why is politics so rancorous? Why is it so cruel to people? Why is politics so much more nasty than subjects that have not been politicized? Right? It's because it's actually a form of Cold War, right? But nobody is allowed to admit it or say it. Just as the rational and sane thing to do would be to kill the opposing football team as it tried to enter your stadium and thus assert its rule over you, it would be rational to kill the opposing candidates and the voters in the current system. A democratic war is a demographic war. And so what makes sense to do if you're in democratic conflict, i.e. demographic conflict with other groups, is mass murder. Because they can vote, and they can vote their will over you, and the righteous and just way to resist that would be to eliminate the invaders, the attackers. Democracy makes every man a soldier, because everyone can vote, and the voting is what it creates the outcomes of these games. Right? The elections are just like these games, and instead of football, it's voting. You got the numbers, you got the votes, you win the war. Right? If Germany was ruling over Poland, and Germany enforced a democratic rule over the Union, in which the majority German population could always override the Poles, would we then say that the Poles should just submit to this system? They should just submit to the will of the people? No, of course not, because there is no the people. There are Germans and Poles. They're separate groups, they're separate people with separate interests and separate desires. Okay? In the United States, there is no the people. Okay? There is no such thing as Americans. And if you think there are, then tell me, what the fuck do you think is an American? Like, what is an American? Is an American a racial type? No, I don't think anybody would say that. Okay, is American an economic ideology? Is it a set of proposals on economic policy? No. Is it a religion? No. Is it a social outlook? No, not at all. Is American a language? This is the closest thing. But if American is a language, well, then what about Canada, Britain, Australia, New Zealand, people all over the world who speak English, people in India who speak English, are they American? I mean, moreover, there are different dialects and accents, so to what extent it's even a language, I would say no, and this is becoming less and less true as Spanish is growing, relatively speaking. So what we have in the United States is several nations bound together by a single state, similar in form to the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact, or the transient Nazi Empire with Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, and Italy, though with fewer gulags for now. A lot of this may seem radical for those who have drunk, the red, white, and blue I pledge allegiance USA Kool-Aid, but from the outside looking in, it seems brutally stupid to not recognize this as the situation. Unfortunately, the USA is something of a cult. Everyone believes in some sacred union. People who hate each other and should be in different nations with different countries they'll temporarily join hands and chant the group chant of the national anthem. So what we have are separate nations, all claiming to be the real America, with different definitions of what is America, this thing that doesn't really exist, who bind themselves together and try to dominate each other because they have sacralized the United States. They have this religion replete, with its age of miracles, the Revolution, the sacred text, the Constitution, Bill of Rights, Federalist Papers, temples, and creepy face statues carved into mountains, and creepy references to the fathers, and loyalty oaths, and triumphalist history for the kiddies. And because just about everyone has bought into this crap, instead of breaking up into nation-states, they maintain this empire of shit because their secular cult of America says to maintain the sacred union. So, how do we have peace? Well, once the situation is understood, the question how to have peace answers itself. The way you achieve peace in a hot war, right? You draw boundaries. You draw new countries. Separate and segregate. The way you have peace with your neighbor is through separation, with walls, with fences. If you start willy-nilly entering his house and sharing his stuff, and he doesn't want to share his stuff with you, and you say, well, too fucking bad, because we outnumber you, and we had a vote, and if you don't like it, well, we'll throw you into a cage for tax evasion, or whatever they make up. What would we call that? Would we call that peace and cooperation, or would we call that war? That would be war. Would we call that something progressive? Would we call it liberal? Would we call it something open-minded? No, it's none of that shit. It's something baser. It's something real. It's war. Peace is not doing that. Peace is offense. Peace is not allowing others into your home and them not allowing you into their home. That's peace. Peace is segregation. Peace is separation. The way to get peace is through peace, right? Which is to say through segregation, which is to say through separation.